Welcome to the Center for U.S. War Veterans Oral Histories at the National Guard Militia Museum of New Jersey in Seagirt, a partner of the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Today is June 26, 2015. I am Carol Fowler, Director of the Center. Assisting is Jonathan Lewis of Rider University. Our honored veteran is Kevin T. Anderson, who served with the United States Army in the Vietnam War. He served from September of 1969 until July of 1971 and was with the 1st Battalion, 39th Artillery, and 1st Arvin Regiment MAC-V Advisor. Thank you for wanting to be here today, Kevin.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Your eyewitness account is considered a primary historical source and a valuable contribution to our Veteran Oral History Project here at the National Guard Militia Museum. And good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you for making the trip here from Pennsylvania. And how did you hear about us, the project?
When I came from my last trip to see the museum, you found out about it, and I was interested right away into putting my historical background in.
Oh, we really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, let's go back to life prior to service. Did anybody in your family serve before you?
Both my parents were in the United States Coast Guard.
Interesting.
And during World War II, and my father did end up going to Normandy.
So interesting. Is that how they met each other?
Yes.
So he must have had a lot of stories about that.
He didn't talk about it much, but then he did talk about when I didn't even realize until I was like a little bit older in life that he had lost one of his eyes from the beach approach to Normandy.
What happened?
It was shrapnel or something, and I never even knew it till I was like 11 or 12 years old. Then I heard a story here and there, but not much, but enough.
Mm-hmm.
And actually didn't really know anything about it till one of my neighbors actually told me by accident about him losing his eye during the war.
Oh, okay.
So, and both my parents were in the Coast Guard, and they were actually both cooks, was their job, until they had to go to war.
So your mom was American?
Yes.
They met here?
She was from New York, my father was from Philadelphia.
And I know that the Coast Guard on D-Day had to recover the bodies in the water?
That's what they were meant, that was their primary job, yes.
Right. So you have quite a military tradition in your family.
Well, that's going back before that. I know on my mother's side, my grandfather, who I never met, was a Bengal Lancer.
Was it what?
Bengal Lancer.
Could you describe that?
It's back in the days of India. We had troops, whether he was from Ireland or England, but he was a Bengal. He was assigned. He was in India.
Like a Bengal tiger?
Well, they're Lancers. They were actually, I don't know if they were British. Actually, they came from Great Britain.
Oh, I see.
And they were there to train Indian troops.
Oh, okay. That was the British Empire, right?
But yeah, way back when, and you're probably talking about before 1900.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So how did you come to be in the service?
It's called the draft. Sitting there, and I knew it was coming, and it was happening in 1969.
Right. You were 19?
19 years of age. Got my notice to report to 401 North Broad in Philadelphia.
So you were entered into the service from Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, Philadelphia.
Okay. And where did they first send you? Let's go through all the locations you were those 2 years, 3 years.
Well, during the day I went to report, the first is like they had a lottery, and then the next thing you know, you didn't know what branch of the service you were in back then. I came very close to being a Marine, which I was glad I wasn't.
Can you tell that story, how you might have become a Marine?
It depended on, they called out certain numbers, the last digits of your social security number, and and they just called everybody out, and they said, just go to the left, and we're sitting there minding our own business, and we didn't know whether this was good or bad, or were we getting out or in, or what. He says, the rest of you guys can sit comfortable now. Now you know you're not U.S. Marines. I said, yep, I'm very comfortable. I don't want to be a Marine. I don't want to go to Paris Island because I heard all about it.
It was horrible back then,
But
compared to now.
the training, we're 19 years old. You actually were in good shape back then, 19. You could do a lot of things. Really. But I was glad to be in the Army. And after that day, then we jumped on a train and headed to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
So it wasn't really a bad adjustment for you?
No, I knew it
Civilian?
was coming.
Okay.
Back then, you either had to be secure in college, had something wrong with you, or just went with the flow. And
Oh, okay.
I knew it was inevitable we were going to go to be drafted.
Okay.
So it happened.
What are your memories from boot camp?
Memories from boot camp were not bad because I actually was in basic training with a friend I grew up in grade school and knew him through high school, and a good friend of mine, and I still see him here and there.
What's his name?
Bill William Connors, and I should have a couple pictures of him today with me.
That's so unusual. You were together.
In basic training, which, and actually there was another guy I was with from my high school, and he was in basic training with me, and I never thought he would make it because he wasn't very athletic or anything like that, but he turned out all right.
That's good. So do you have any memories from then that you want to share?
Just getting through 8 weeks of getting prepared was just hard, a lot of hard work if you weren't in shape. And to tell you the truth, you see a lot of people were picked on, like you see in certain movies and things of that nature. It wasn't like that. The instructors helped you. They didn't kick you and tell you and call you names if you couldn't do something. They took the time and helped you. They really did. Because that's really what their job was, to get you ready.
Were they combat veterans
Yes.
themselves? Vietnam?
Vietnam,
What did they tell you about the country?
get ready. Don't say you know something or you can do something if you don't. Don't fake it like a test. This is not, they don't want, if you're going to fail the test because you don't know something,
It could cost you your
cost you
life.
so your life or somebody else's life.
Sure.
Don't say, okay, I know, and you don't know. No matter how, thick-headed you are.
And did you also learn to be there for each other, the camaraderie?
Yes.
You went over as a group?
Actually, after they figured out what your aptitude or whatever was in basic training, you went to your advanced individual training, next, AIT.
Where was that?
And my next duty station was Fort Sill, Oklahoma, as artillery.
Was that an adjustment for you? The Midwest?
It was never so hot, never so cold in my life. But this was cold. Turned out to be cold when you were out in the training.
It was winter.
It was, yes.
Do you have any stories from then?
No, it was just totally different in the Midwest, and I never saw so many out when we were training in the middle of nowhere. You could see the sky. There's no cities around you. There's nothing around you. You could see everything in the sky. It was beautiful.
Oh.
You froze, but it was beautiful.
So can you describe a typical day?
Typical day in basic training or advanced AIT
Advanced, yeah.
was just getting up at 5 o'clock, getting done your business and getting ready on time and getting ready for inspection. And you had to be prepared or you were going to hear about it. And actually, back when you're 19, there were certain things you could get away with. Like in my case, I didn't have too much time to worry about shaving because I had no beard. Some
Really?
guys, and you used to get caught with beards, they used to be in serious trouble.
Oh, okay.
So it's like just looking presentable. You didn't have to look like you're going to a Broadway musical or anything like just be dressed properly and not having your clothes rolled up in a ball. Just, presentable.
Okay.
But you're gonna get dirty anyway that day.
Did you get to go home after Oklahoma?
Yes, I went home after Oklahoma before we went to deployed to Vietnam.
What was that like?
Nice to get home, but then I knew we were gonna leave again. So actually, when you get 30 days leave, and
It's nice.
you did what you had to do, is you know, just like the old song, "Leaving on a Jet Plane." You don't know when you're coming, if you're coming back again.
So
So-
did you have to get your affairs in order?
There was not many fairs to do in 19. No,
You didn't have a will?
no, nothing like that.
Okay.
Nothing. The only thing I had was my car, and that one they sold that when I was gone
What?
because didn't need it. It was like
Oh, because you'd be gone for quite a while.
I was gone for a year, and I wish I
Right.
had it now. It was a '64 Mustang.
Sounds nice. So how did your family feel about you going?
Not good, but
Were you the only son?
no, I had a little brother.
Oh, okay. All right, so take us on that trip.
From Fort Sill, from home
Home.
was good. After 30 days, I had to report back, and next thing I knew, I was in Cameron Bay.
Take us on the trip, though. The voyage or the flight.
Oh, the flight to get I flew to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco we went to Fort Lewis, Washington State, McChord Air Force Base. And then we were deployed to go to Vietnam, stopping at various spots along the way. Now, on the way out, we stopped in the Philippines and Guam.
Did you
And-
get off the plane?
No, you stayed right on the plane.
Okay.
They did whatever they refueled or whatever they had on the plane.
Was it commercial?
Yes, they were commercial.
And were you all troops on the plane?
Troops, yeah, it was Flying Tiger Airlines, FTA. And I don't want to tell you what that means if you didn't.
Okay.
But
I'll give you data.
but the
But earlier you said you liked the Army. You didn't want to be a Marine.
I didn't want to be a Marine. I
So
didn't
you
want
still
to.
like the Army at this
Yes,
point?
yeah, I had no qualms about being in the Army.
And then from Guam,
We went right to Vietnam,
Cam
Cam Bay.
And what were your first impressions? Was it a hot zone? I mean, like with activity?
Cam Bay was a major base. It's like very big, like not a metropolis, but not exactly where you would find firefights and things of that nature. It was
Okay.
big.
On the beach?
There was everything was there. It was a big base, and we didn't get much. Believe me, you didn't get time to see any beaches or anything like that with the processing, and because that's when you were going to find out where you were going to go, what your job was going to be.
What were your first impressions?
That we had no idea what was going to happen in the beginning until they started breaking us down into groups, and they started picking out the people. The really brains were picked. I guess they went by your mathematics. They picked them as surveyors, and then second group became artillery, and I was chosen as artillery.
I never heard the term surveyors over there. What was that job? Do you
Well,
know?
I guess when you went in, there was like a plan where when they went into a surveying, they picked a bait where they're going to open up a fire base for artillery.
Oh,
You had to survey what was going to happen. The leveling off a base from mountains to make a flat level out of a fire base. So
Okay.
they knew what they were doing. I mean, somebody had to know what they were doing. There was a plan.
so you had all kinds of troops at that base?
Yes, first you had engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, and then you would have the artillery.
I meant you had more than Army there?
It was all Army.
Oh, all Army.
All Army.
What about the South Vietnamese Army?
That was, they had at certain bases had certain requirements for Arvin Regiment.
Oh, so Arvin wasn't at
Not
Cam
at
Ranh?
every base.
Okay.
They had certain ones, and even had Koreans.
I was just going to ask about that.
So
Rock Marines.
So after we found out our duty station, what you were going to do, found out I was going to be assigned to the 1st to the 39th Artillery. And then they were asking the questions, what do you want to do when you get to your duty station? Do you want to be a gun bunny?
What?
A gun bunny. Because you want to work on the giant howitzers, firing artillery rounds off. And they thought about it, and they said, with your aptitude in screws, you could do something different. You didn't really have to do that. You could be assigned to what I ended up doing, liaison. Which I'm thinking, well, I don't want to really haul artillery shells. And back then, you still had to pick them up and put them on trays and put them in the
Trucks.
into the gun itself.
Oh, right.
They brought all if you know how to use the howitzers, you didn't have to do any of that manual stuff from the trucks. They brought them to you at the guns
Nice.
for a fire mission, so you just still had to
Except-
pick them up and put them in the trays.
Except what about hearing damage?
That's why I thought about those
Oh.
things are screamers.
Right.
They were loud. They sound like freight trains coming and going. I think, you know what, this liaison sounds pretty good. And I wasn't really big. I was 5'9", and I wasn't a big guy, but it didn't really matter. But I kind of got interested in what they were talking about, liaison, with the 1st to the 39th. And what liaison took in was, this base had ARVNs, 1st ARVN Regiment. So the later plan was, when you went to Camp Eagle, which was 1st to the 39th was located, the plan was, in a future date, was being relocated to Firebase Nancy in I Corps, where the 1st ARVN Regiment was located, in Fubai. So after introduction there, and learning the ropes in Camp Evans, we were deployed to go to Firebase Nancy after it was leveled off to make a new base out of it, which would take in the engineers, the artillery, 1st to the 39th Artillery, and the 1st ARVN Regiment, which is actually foot soldiers, as you call grunts. That was the base setup.
Camp Evans, was that at Cameron Bay?
Camp Evans was like around the Da Nang area.
And Camp Eagle?
That's basically the same thing, Camp Eagle.
Okay. So how did you get to Fubai and Da Nang?
Well, actually, we left Camp Evans to go to Firebase Nancy. They took us up by vehicle.
Just on a major road?
Major road, yeah, right on a major road. QL Route 1 goes right up the coast on deuce and a halves, big trucks in the back, and that's where we were dumped off.
So the roads weren't lined or anything?
Oh, no.
Oh, that's good.
No, it was a major road, just like any other road. It's 1 lane each way, 2-lane highway. And it was perfectly safe during the day, and most of the time. And you really, you could go on that road any time of the day, really, if you use common sense. Because you went through mostly all the towns were safe.
Did you have a weapon?
Oh, yes, definitely.
What was it?
An M16.
Did you like it?
Oh, yeah. It's a great weapon. Just had to make sure it was clean, especially during bad weather.
What was the morale of the troops that you came across?
At first, when you got to Camp Evans, before we were deployed, it was like you were known as FNGs, new guys, and you all heard about what you hear about guys that were there a long time and they were getting what they called short. They didn't have much time left. They would let you know how close they were to going home, and you got a whole year ahead of you. Mm-hmm. Some of them were like that, but others just they mind their own business. But the big mouths you heard, so you just ignored them. So the morale was kind of like, oh boy, here goes the whole year. But you know what? You just took one day at a time. And that's what it was all about. You know, try to find a buddy here and there. But then, before we went to Firebase, Nancy, when you were starting to get oriented with the base there and the way of life, and the temperature change, you found out within a week what your job was going to be. Now, before I left there, I knew I was going to be liaison, so they were trying to teach me as much as I could about how to speak broken Vietnamese, because in the near future, I was going to be assigned with the Vietnamese. Even though they spoke English, broken English, they wanted me to learn broken Vietnamese to a degree.
Do you remember any of it?
Not much, but I got enough to get by, and it was mostly writing numbers down, and that wasn't hard to do. The numbers, grid numbers and stuff like that, and what they wanted each other to relay to each other. Basically, it was numbers and what the purpose of the numbers were. Fire mission, unfriendly people in the area.
Were they educated?
Yes, they were.
Sounds like it.
They were educated. Now, mostly, every one of them was they were somewhat of an officer that were in the Fire Mission Center that we used to call the TOC. It was called the Arvin TOC. They were all educated.
And you were Spec 4?
I was a Spec 4.
What does that equate to?
It's like a step right under a sergeant. And that was basically, if you were a 2-year draftee, that's usually what you ended up as, unless you did something wrong.
Oh, true. Get bumped down.
Well, if you just got by and you didn't want to do anything, you didn't get promoted.
Of course. Yeah.
If you made E5 in 2 years, you did really well. And not many people got to be an E5.
Because there's only so many spots.
There's only so many spots, and you were in a level where if you would have to join the Army to go any, and not too many people were joining the Army. It was,
Re-enlist, yeah.
yeah, unless you enlist.
Which
But-
they ask you when you get out, right?
Not really. They knew
Oh.
better.
Oh,
No, they knew you were going to be moving along, going back to your regular job. No.
what was your baptism by fire? Did you have one?
Pardon me?
Baptism by fire?
By fire. Oh, the first time I saw the enemy was actually in the field. Was my first trip out as an RTO operator.
What's that?
Well, that's part of the liaison where when the part I didn't realize at first, being in liaison, was you were calling in fire missions. So I was with the artillery, but I was out with the Vietnamese soldiers, grunts.
Like a scout or a forward observer?
We were forward observers. We were going out in the jungle to look for what we were supposed to find. URS reports of enemy compounds. So we would go out on a combat assault and go and jump in the middle of a jungle after they blew off the top so the helicopters could land. We would go in there and one by one each chopper would drop off the troops. And I was the artillery liaison to call in artillery. I had the radio on my back, all my gear on my back. And that was my first time we went on a combat assault, is when we first got fired on, going in about 14 kilometers from Phu. Our first assault was.
What kind of helicopter?
They were all Hueys. And
What did you mean, let me interrupt you, what did you mean blow off the top? Of the jungle?
Well, if you're going into an LZ, there has to be a perfect spot for helicopters. You have to try to land somewhat. There can't be any tree types laying in the way, so they would call a time on target, and they would blow off they pick this grid out, and they would try to find somewhere where you can be up high and land the helicopters and have flat level. So they would call in air strikes and artillery strikes on that hill and just try to level it as much as possible so you could try to land the helicopters.
What kind of aircraft would take care of that job?
Well, first of all, it would be artillery and whatever the airstrike was, whatever they had back then. I think they were A-10 Warhogs will come in and drop 1,000-pound bombs or 500-pounders and just blow up the top of the hill. Being on the ground, I have no idea what they did, but I know the artillery part of it. They just kept firing on until the observation helicopter said it was okay to land. So that's where you get a LOACH, which is a late observation helicopter, would be flying around, usually with the colonel of the battalion, letting you know when it looked okay to call in the assault.
Before we continue with your story about that, what were your opinions of your officers?
Oh, they were all good guys. They were great. They worked. They did their
Right.
job. Yes,
They were visible to the troops.
they were visible.
That's good.
And
So getting back to being in the jungle with the ARVN, did they teach you how to look for signs of enemy activity other than compounds? Like, did you look for if leaves were crushed or grass was?
well, actually, to tell you the truth, after we land. The first, like you were saying, the first time we took on fire, the day we were landing, we took on fire, and I was the only American. I was with an Australian captain and the 1st ARVN Regiment, a platoon from the 1st ARVN Regiment.
The pilot was Australian?
No. The pilots just dropped you off and they're gone.
Oh, I see.
They were gone. They dropped off. Combat assault is when you have like 200 troops and it would be like 20 choppers coming in and there are like 10 guys on each chopper would get off as quick as possible. And then they would just be gone. They didn't land. They're gone. You're dumped. You're dropped like at a bus stop. You're gone. You're on your own after that.
And the only communication is the radio
The
you have
radio on the
your
back, my back.
Your
That was
back.
it. And the ARVNs had a radio on their back.
And who were they communicating with?
Just their base command. I was communicating with artillery and air through the fire direction or control. I would call in gun support and airstrikes. And the Australian was in charge of the Vietnamese troops and their officers. He would call in airstrikes.
And how was his broken Vietnamese? Did he do well?
He could speak perfect Vietnamese, terrible at English, but even though he was English, I took a hard time getting used to him, but he was a phenomenal officer. I'd love to be able to find him, but I don't think he's around.
Oh,
He was an older guy, I'm 19. I mean, this guy to me back then seemed ancient. He really did. But as far as learning stuff, like you said, from the Vietnamese, if I actually needed my M16 in the jungle, I was going to be dead anyway. We'd all be dead. Before they got to me and the Australian captain and their officers, we'd all be dead. If I needed my M16, I was dead man anyway. They would have been.
I don't get it. What do you mean?
We would have been all dead. If I got in combat, hand-to-hand combat, would have been overran so badly. It would have been a disaster.
Because you were the new guy?
No, because they were all around us.
Oh.
Our troops, when we landed, they just went around. They went out into the platoon went out into their own squads. So you'd have like 20 guys in each squad. They would go out and surround where we just landed in the helicopters to make sure and go out into the jungle to make sure we were safe.
Oh, okay.
So when we first landed, we took on fire and we were getting shot up. And there was that one lieutenant who I never found out what happened to him, disappeared.
He was taken?
I didn't know him. I'm in the jungle. I said to the captain, "Where is?" I used to call him John. His first name was John, and he said he's not with us now. And I didn't know what he meant by that.
Do you remember John? Do you remember his last name?
Nope, never
Or
met
where
him
he was
before.
from? Oh.
He was lieutenant, and when I asked questions later, when you're getting fired on, you just don't ask too many questions.
Of course. Yeah.
And bottom line, I found out later on, he was where we landed is where he was left. That was it.
It's a shame.
I know.
So, what were your actions or reactions to landing and getting fired on, did you run with the ARVN? Did you stay with your group?
Well, actually, the first guys that got off, they had let a few helicopters out, landed, and jumped them all off, and it was pretty smooth. But they said they were getting fired on. I could hear it on the bottom of. I could hear ping, ping, ping on the bottom of our helicopter, and the guy wasn't going to land because he thought we were going to get hit. And the next thing I know, I had the radio. And we started going real slow, and that's why I say, you know what it's like to ride in a helicopter. When it gets real slow, you can almost fall out of them, the centrifugal force. And the next thing I know, the door gunner was telling me, you're going. And I said, how am I going to go? I'm 40 feet in the air. And he says, you're going. And the next thing I know, I'm gone. Pushed me.
Oh,
Yeah, right down. Had to be 30, 40 feet.
yeah.
And I landed in some trees and shrubs and stuff like that. And actually, there was guys down there, Vietnamese soldiers waiting, and I was bleeding all over the place. But I thought I was shot at first, but I wasn't. I just cut my eye and I dislocated my shoulder a little bit. They had to put my shoulder back in. But I was bleeding, and it was just pouring out, like shooting out. It was like down here. But the Vietnamese, he wasn't a medic, he was just a regular soldier, was saying, he was saying number one, no shot. I'm like,
Oh, okay.
because I thought I was shot, but it was something from the bush that cut my eye, and I was bleeding all over, and they stopped the bleeding. But the guy who kicked me out actually did me a favor, because he went down. That chopper went down. That chopper went crashed.
Oh.
But there's not many others did. They all made it out.
So did the one who helped you with the bleeding, did he also pop your shoulder back in?
They did that later. Just wanted me to get off the landing zone and I was able to walk and anything like that. And I had all that gear on, but I was able, to get moving and all that. And they made sure I knew I wasn't shot, because they knew they were checking to make sure it was just a cut.
And all that bleeding could have left a trail, right?
No, there was nothing to worry about that, because we were
okay.
going to be long gone by the end. Within an hour, we were going to be humping through the jungle to get out of here. But actually, when they fanned out to find out, they did find a little bunch of guys, and they fought them off. And they killed a few, and they never found the rest of them. They were just gone. More than likely, they heard the choppers coming. That's what happened. They heard them coming, and they were in. We went there because we knew they were there somewhere. That's why they saw it was me. They knew there was they were there.
What you just described is typical warfare over there. They come out, they shoot, and then they disappear, right?
Well, they knew the ORS report said they were in that area, and they were building up. That's why they sent the 1st ARVN Regiment there to get rid of them, because it was actually too close to the major highway. You're talking about 10 kilometers away from a major highway. And whoever turned the report in was right. They were there, and they were mustering there. Just like we mustered in our bases, they were mustering there, and the more they got there, they were planning something. So that's why they planned the combat assault. So that started my first 54 days in the jungle.
Oh, that's a long time.
54 straight days. After things calmed down and everybody realized what we were doing, and there wasn't many, they knew what they were doing because they did it for a living. This was all new to me.
Oh, okay.
These guys had been in the war for a long time. I was a rookie. And what you were asking, but did they help me? Yes, they helped me do everything. They told me what to do, how far not to go out, stay close, but not too close to them. But they told me how to, be prepared if anything happens. They told me right off, don't ever take your shoes off at night. So here I am, 54 days. And if I took my shoes off, it would be in the morning for a brief period of time to change socks. Because they showed me how to sleep in trees. You didn't sleep on the ground. And this was in nice weather. It wasn't pouring rain yet, it wasn't monsoon, it was nice weather. So they would show you how to go up, get yourself set up. Used to give you you had a hammock. And you would tie the hammock in the tree so you could sleep up there. And so you didn't lay on the ground for a lot of reasons. snakes, things of that nature. There's a lot of snakes, bugs.
Couldn't snakes go up the tree?
Well, you're better off in the tree than it was on the ground, because the deadly ones were on the ground. So it was the same thing every night. Every night they would set up guard perimeters, no fires or anything like that. And the guys, the Vietnamese would be out on patrol,
And what would you be doing?
just waiting for anything to be, if they ran into trouble, we'd have to call in an airstrike or artillery if they got in any trouble.
What was it like for you to be the only really English-speaking person?
But the Australian spoke English, but it was hard to understand, but it wasn't easy.
Did he understand you?
Yeah, he understood me, but he was hard to understand, but I got used to him after a while.
I was thinking also maybe you learned more Vietnamese with the Arvin. Did you try to talk to each other more?
I learned more and more, but they were speaking broken English. They were used to it. They like I said, it wasn't their first job.
What did they call you, GI? Or that's what the kids used to say.
They used to call me 554 because that was my call sign. 554. They used to
That's
call
right,
me
you said
554. 554. That's all they knew. That was my radio call sign.
Did you know any of their names?
In the beginning I did, but they were so weird. I just knew them by looking at them. I used to rename him anyway. If his name was Tom Dean, I would call one guy Joe or one guy. I just renamed him. It didn't matter.
Right.
They knew who I was and what I did, and they made sure if I had to call something in, they would let me know right away.
Why did you say that they wanted you to not stay right by them? What did that mean?
Because if they got shot, and if I was close to them and I had the radio, and they couldn't call in a fire mission if I was dead. I had the radio.
Oh, that makes sense.
I had a radio. They said, "Stay. Don't get too close to us."
Was the Australian with them or with you?
He was with me.
And what was his job?
He was MACV advisory, and that's what the whole thing was. I was assigned to MACV advisory liaison, artillery division.
And he was advising them on how to use artillery now?
He was part of the plan for the assault. And I guess before they had French doing it, before the Americans came in the country, he was still there from the Australian part of it. MACV advisory had different people from different countries.
Whenever I heard about MACV, it was in the early 60s. You were their leader in 69.
I was there 69.
I was wondering if it had anything to do with the Vietnamization project?
It could have been, but
Agriculture and things like that?
no, nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay.
There was
Because things were still hot when...
There was still a war going on,
Right,
big time.
right.
I don't know, maybe they were planning for they were trying to end this thing and it wasn't ending. Everybody kept saying this thing's going to end, and it wasn't going to end because it wasn't going to end until we got out of there. They didn't care how long it took the North Vietnamese. That was in the bottom of their mind. And I never realized that, and now that I see different documentaries on TV, but when we sat around at night, the Australian was talking one time. He says, they're never going to let this go till we go. And I said, well, it's going to end one of these days. And he says, yeah, but not until we're out of here. And he says, it's going to happen. We know it. They knew they weren't going to stop.
Because they had help.
They just kept coming. They had multiple people. They didn't care how many people got killed.
They had the communist Chinese and they had the Soviets.
They didn't care. They were just going to keep coming. And they didn't want Americans in there. And the French were gone. And everybody would say the French didn't want to fight. The French ran out of money. From what I read in the books, they just ran out of money. And if you see it in movies saying that you'll see certain things are true, I guess this is an American war now, and it was an American war.
Did you have any opinions about a philosophy about foreign policy or anything yourself?
Not back then. I was only 19.
Right,
Not much.
right.
But
Like you said, you took it one day at a time.
One day at a time, and then the next day, after a couple of days went by, if they say a day and a half went by, we were safe when we first landed. We only moved like a couple kilometers and we set up a little base camp. And it was very safe because everybody went out on recon. And there was nothing going on because they knew we were there. So whoever's there started moving away from us.
Oh,
So then it started the march to try to find them. Now, that's when I found out I wasn't in as great a shape as I thought I was. When you're hauling up and down mountains and it's 100 degrees, you're starting to suffer. Drink too much, the water's just coming right through you. And you weren't supposed to drink a lot. That's when you found out how good a shape you were in. And I thought I was in great shape.
I don't understand. Why weren't you supposed to drink a lot?
Because you cramp up. You were so hot and you're carrying 60 pounds on your back, you would get nauseous. And you weren't supposed to eat. You were supposed to eat very light. You weren't supposed to eat till later in the day because you'd be going a couple, like 10 kilometers in the jungle, up and down. You might be moving 2 kilometers on a map, but you're going up and down mountains. It'd be like walking 10 kilometers, going up and around mountains. And you're hauling up. And going down is no easier than going up. Down. Going down. You got to brace yourself going down mountains with all that weight on your back.
So what you're carrying is food to last 54 days?
Well, you would get a drop off here and there, but you were carrying your weapon, your ammunition. I mean, they dare not get caught without ammunition. When you get in a firefight, there's no such thing as, hey, how about lending me some clips? No, nobody's going to give you any clips. Vietnamese never had that problem. They were always prepared. I was with the Vietnamese regiment. I was on a base where we got attacked, and some of the guys who didn't think they were ever going to be attacked were not prepared.
Where was that?
Were not prepared. At Firebase Nancy. And I can tell you about that later when we got attacked. They weren't prepared. It was, hey, I need some clips. Right, you're not getting any. I mean, people gave them to them, but if they didn't think they were ever going to get attacked, they're crazy. I mean, you're supposed to carry at least 1,000 rounds of ammunition. I mean, at least 500.
How heavy is that?
That's a lot of weight. You're talking about 20 pounds of just magazines full of bullets, 20 in a clip. So if you had 20 clips, that's 400 rounds, which was minimal. That's going to be about 15, 20 pounds of weight you're carrying, plus your weapon, plus your gear, and whatever food you carried, or water, basically water. So your rations were very light. LRP rations were light. It was just like powdered stuff you add water to and stir it and you ate it to keep you going. That's what it was. Not C rations, LRP rations.
Like what astronauts have?
Like powdered foods, and they came in packages, plastic things, and here and there a can of peaches or things like that, but they were very light, and you couldn't only carry so much. The Vietnamese carried livestock.
Oh.
I always remember telling my wife about that. If one was making too much noise that night, you knew it was for dinner the next day. It was either a chicken or a pig. And they carried livestock. It was strange. But they would carry chicken or a pig. It was really weird.
Were they with you in the helicopter when you landed?
When I landed, I was with a lieutenant, a captain, and myself, because we had the radios.
So you met up with Arvin in the jungle?
They were the first ones in. The first couple choppers went in, were loaded with grunts. And then we went in, like right in the middle of it.
How big was the Arvin regiment?
There was about 200 troops we went out with.
It's a lot.
It was plenty. Like you were saying, if I got in combat and I actually needed my M16 the first day, we were all dead anyway. If they got to us, we were overrun. What they would call they just called broken arrow. Broken arrow means you're done. Broken arrow means anything goes. And you may have seen that in a movie here and there. Now,
What's the name of the movie?
you're going to go by movies and things like that. I really have not seen a very, very realistic movie in my time
Of what you experienced.
of what they're showing in movies about Vietnam, because they would never know. Some of like what you're hearing now, unless you found one of the guys who replaced me, you're not going to hear this again, because it was unique being with Vietnamese in the jungle. And it was their full-time job. They didn't want to be communists. They loved Americans, and I got to be very close to a lot of them. And when I used to get back in the rear with downtime, I used to go with their families and visit their families and got to know them really well.
Were you told if VC were in the villages?
They knew right away. I'm glad you asked me that. You knew right away, and there was no such thing as a VC in the village. If you went, the people would never take you in there if there was a VC. You knew right away if there was VC or there was no NVA in the area. You knew it was a good village. Everybody knew each other too close to even permit that.
Oh, okay.
So there was, in certain little villages, there was no such thing as a cousin coming to visit or anything. It was not, they wouldn't do it, because you don't know who the cousin is. And you don't know who is a VC sympathizer or an MV, So there was no such thing. Everybody knew everybody in the village.
So what are your most memorable experiences about going with the ARVN to their families? And
Oh, they loved us. They loved Americans. They didn't want to be taken over. They were scared to death. They waited on you. They were family. And you see some of my pictures of the girls on the base actually, and the first thing you think, they were good family girls. They used to come at Firebase Nancy, if they didn't know somebody from the Vietnamese 1st ARVN Regiment, they couldn't get on our base in the first place to pick up laundry, and that was their way of life, is doing laundry and cleaning here and there. They got paid. They're all very family-oriented people.
And I would think that their lives improved by having jobs with the American troops.
They definitely improved, because they were either farmers and or they did something related to the war, like nobody did their laundry. You had to take, when you got to the point, you took your laundry in to get it done. And your laundry never smelled good. It just got the mud out, and it was in the winter, in the monsoon time, it just smelled like fire. Oh, yeah, that's how they dried the clothes. We didn't have washers and dryers.
Right.
It was all done by hand in rivers
Right.
and dried over fire. So you always smelled like fire. Your clean clothes, they were pressed good, they looked good, they didn't smell good.
There were no clotheslines.
No. And when you got your clothes in the monsoons back, when you finally got them back, and they would deliver them, they came and picked them up and they'd take them away to the village where they lived. They were meticulously, but they still smelled. From one way or the other, the fires.
Wow.
But the locals, they loved Americans.
And living conditions were good for you, other than in the jungle?
Well, in the jungle, it's when you're drinking bad water, you get dysentery. And it happened to me many times, and I was told, don't drink it, and I learned the hard way, don't drink it. And you had to wait a certain amount, you put purification pills in your water, you had to wait. And sometimes you're so thirsty, you had to drink it. And then you didn't wait long enough, you got sick. And it would come out both ends. So then you're in the jungle and you got many problems going on. You don't need dysentery at the same time. It just made life miserable. So there was no bottled water.
Right.
Like there is, so you just learned the hard way. And not every time you went out in the jungle was 50-some days. Sometimes it was like 3 weeks. Which like almost like a vacation. I'm only kidding. It wasn't a vacation, but after 50-some days, it was going back into the base was nice. Taking a shower
Oh, sure.
and getting your different clothes on, but you didn't have many clothes to change in. And if you're out there for 50-some days, you wore the same clothes.
And boots.
And it's only one pair of boots. It's like we weren't at the shore. You had to travel, like, that's what you call traveling, like,
Did you suffer any complications like parasites or skin conditions, jungle rot?
I didn't come up with anything bad, but I don't know if I ever got Agent Orange, but they did say, when I went back to the base one time, they said, that close to that area was sprayed with Agent Orange, but I never had anything happen to me,
Oh, okay.
because, you never knew where you were going to be. And to tell you, it's not a funny story, but one of our recon teams on one of the combat assaults, we were firing all night. We had a mission, and one of our ARVN teams came back talking to the captains, and the Australian said they ran into some Americans. And he said, this is not good. So he said, all right, I'll be back. And he went with the platoon, and here they were first cav, lost.
Oh,
He said they were being fired on at night. Yeah, they were being fired on by us because they weren't where they were supposed to be.
oh, I've heard of that.
They were way off where they were supposed to be. They were lost. So they straightened that out right away. And they would have never known if it wasn't for the Vietnamese that they were off where they were supposed to be. They said, we were under attack last night. Says, yeah, you were getting attacked because you're lost. One of the Vietnamese platoons heard them, saw them, and thought they were unfriendly. Called up, got the great coordinates, called in and said, they're bad guys. Let them have it.
So there's no like password or anything?
No, there's no pass. There's no. Not at night in the jungle.
Right.
No, it's not. They were lost, and they should have been really embarrassed, to tell you the truth.
How long had they been lost? Do they have weapons and ammo?
It was a platoon. They were lost. They had everything.
So they were firing back?
They can't fire on artillery. No, because there was enough of them where the platoon went out on recon, the group went out. There's too many of them to take on, so they just reported it. But they knew they were American. They got close enough to know that they were Americans, so they could hear them. So that's how good. They could have been attacked by a Zapper brigade of Vietnamese. They would have been taken over because they got that close. They knew they were speaking English. So they came back and told us, there's Americans down there. So, and they're like, oh boy, they're not supposed to be there. And he straightened it out right away.
So did you get on the radio?
The Australian did, to tell them. He met them had to tell them, find out who they are, find out what they're doing there and how far they're off course to let them know, and find out who is the friendlies and the closest friendly in the area, and find out who they were and what they were, and had to get their radio coordinates to tell them, you guys are lost. Get out of there. So they finally communicated with them and told them to get out of there. They're lost. Told them where to go and how far they were off course.
Pointed them in the right direction?
Point them in the right direction because somebody made a mistake somewhere. Because if you kept taking fire on, and I don't know how they would think it was, they knew it had to be artillery. They knew it was artillery. It's a good thing it wasn't an airstrike because they'd all be dead. They would all be dead.
It sounds like that could definitely happen.
A lot.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it did, because if you're not sure where you were, or say they came in contact and the brains of the operation didn't make it, that's why you had to have somebody that had to know, you had to have more than one person to know what they were doing, or you'd be in a bunch of crap.
So it's like being blind in the jungle, right?
You have no idea where you're going.
There's no night vision goggles.
Not compass, a map telling you, they had maps telling you where certain hills were, and you could see them if you knew how to read the map right. But you needed somebody who knew what they were doing. And it wasn't a 19-year-old like me, that's for sure.
Did you have flashlights
I had a flashlight, yeah.
and batteries?
Yep. And actually, I had to carry extra battery for the radio. Prick 25 is not exactly a light thing to carry on your back. It weighs a few pounds, and then you had an extra battery to carry along with it.
Oh, yeah.
Normally they'll make it a couple weeks, so you had to carry an extra battery.
Right.
But as far as like you asked me about being in the jungle, and you have to know where you're going to survive. That's why these guys, I don't know, they never found out what happened to them, why they were lost, but they were lost.
Who had the map with your?
The Australian captain, which in Vietnamese is Dao We. The highest ranking person on the Vietnamese side that was in our combat assault was a lieutenant. The captain stayed at the TOC.
What's that?
That's where the TOC is. I don't know the exact. It's operations, tactical operations compound. And when we were at Firebase Nancy, the Arvin TOC is where I would be. So at Firebase Nancy, you had the engineers, the artillery, and the Arvins, the grunts. And they would sit there. When we were back at the base, we would sit there at night and we would take turns on the radio for the next bunch of grunts that went out, whether it would be American or Arvin. They would call in grids saying, there's movement here. Is it friendly or is it unfriendly? And we would get the grids and check it out. And the Vietnamese would give me his grids and I would give him our grids to clear. And it went both ways. Do you have it? And we'd say, there are no friendlies, it's got to be bad guys.
Oh, okay.
Let them have it. That's what it was all about. And this went on all night long, 24 hours a day. We always had 3 shifts. We'd have, actually, if there was 3 people on the radio, it's like a regular job. And we would do 12 hours because we only had 2 people. And then we were assigned a captain. We finally got an officer, Captain Smalley, and I'm sure he's still around, greatest guy around. He was an officer, but he worked. He decided, you know what? I want to work for a living. You know, they used to say, no, don't call me a sir. I work for a living. Sergeants used to say that all the time. He decided to pull a full shift on the radio, 8 hours. So we had 3 guys on the radio all day long. And he would do his thing, and just like we did, because he wanted something to do, worthwhile. And his name was James Smalley. And he was, at the time, he was regular Army. And he was a really nice guy. He never went out in the jungle. It was usually up to, the regular guys. And actually, when he got close to the point where he was going to re-up and join and for another X number of years, right before that, like a couple days prior to that, he got a telegram that he was the sole inheritance of his family's fortune, inherited $11 million.
Oh,
He did not re-up.
wow.
He said, no more Army. Could you blame him?
Where was he from?
He was from Texas. And actually, in my slides, you'll see that he threw a party at Firebase Nancy. And it was fully, catered, what you want to call catered, party. Party to us was drinking beer and sodas and having a roasted pig or things like that, and hot dogs and stuff. But he hired a Korean band and he had a party for himself. Because he was close to getting out of country also at the same time. So he left a millionaire.
It's a very unusual story.
It was unbelievable, and I'm sure he's still around. I hope he's still around, because he wasn't that much older than me. He's probably around, I'd say 74, 73. But if you knew Captain Smalley, he was like having Dick Van Dyke. That's what he reminded you of, his mannerism. He was like a tall, lanky guy, always one step behind the conversation. because he didn't feel like he was part of a group, but he wanted to be part of a group. You know, one of the guys. No, let's put it that way.
That's good.
He was a nice guy, but it's just his mannerism. He was a funny guy. He was a nice guy. Let's put it that way. But it wasn't. You could tell he was in ROTC. He
Right.
came from wealth. You could tell that he wasn't used to going out with the guys and stuff like that. He was like fun. He was like Gomer Pyle. You want to put Gomer Pyle, but an educated Gomer Pyle. Let's put it that way. Kind of his mannerism was
A little
weird.
awkward.
Awkward, yeah. Not sure of himself around people, but and he was a captain.
Right.
But
And he was respected.
oh yeah, definitely. Great, very well respected, and he really was highly respected by the Vietnamese, especially after his party. They loved him.
Yeah. Did the Vietnamese get along with the Koreans in the unit?
They seemed to, yeah. And we didn't see much of them at Firebase Nancy. Now I saw Koreans at Firebase Barnett, and that was another part of my journey from Nancy. For some reason, I got shifted to Firebase Barnett,
Where was that?
and that was about 10 miles away from the Laotian border, north. That was another blowing up the top of a mountain situation. And they started that Firebase from nothing. And that meant bringing artillery in, smaller artillery, that you could bring in by helicopter. You couldn't bring in 175s at 8-inch by helicopter. You could get giant helicopters to bring in 105s. It was small artillery.
A Chinook?
Yeah, you can bring them in with a Chinook. You can drop off artillery. And that had happened real quick. Because they saw you bringing in howitzers, they're going to just muster and blow you up before you even land. So that is saw happen real quick. And you're really on the top of a mountain there. That was, you wake up there in the morning, it was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. But if it wasn't for a war,
That's right.
it was beautiful.
You're not the first person who said that it might be a nice place to go on vacation if there wasn't a war.
Oh, it was beautiful. Especially sitting on top of a mountain, looking around. Sitting in here, actually, sometimes you're sitting in clouds. You can see the clouds just going by you. I mean, it's not that high elevation, it's just the way that the jungle was.
Did the enemy ever come up the mountain?
Nope. They never did anything there. Now, while we were at Barnett there, I heard the story about them raiding Firebase Roy. They attacked Firebase Roy, the Zapper Battalion. They got Firebase Roy and they overran it.
What was the Sapper Battalion? You mentioned that earlier.
Zapper?
Sapper Battalion.
It was April 13th. It was like the peak. It was like business as usual of the monsoons. I mean, it was pouring. And it was like pouring every day there. And it was so everywhere you went to, you were like not knee high, but pretty high up in mud everywhere. And this was at Firebase Nancy. And I was at the TOC, the Arvin TOC. And just so happened, it was like I would say 2 o'clock in the morning, something wasn't right. We heard something, and saw a flare go up. And one of the guys was just looking out into the wire, and he thought he saw something. And this was the engineers were at the far end of the base, and that's where they started coming in at. And at the artillery point part of it, one of the guys who was on the gun was looking out, and he said he saw something, and he had really good eyes. And he said, man, that's not a mongoose or anything like that. He says, something's big out there. And he took a flare and just went boom. And whatever it was, he hit straight on, right in front of him. And up it stood. It was a Vietnamese big guy. And then all of a sudden, all the flares started going up from all the guns. And artillery pieces, the guys who were manning the guns. A couple guys would be up, and the rest would be doing their normal sleeping until they got called on. And next thing I know, it all broke loose. They were inside the compound already,
Wow.
all over the place through the engineer's part.
What did they have, grenades?
They had their AK-47s, they had everything, they had explosives. They were gonna try to overtake Nancy, Fire Base Nancy. Because that was like, they couldn't overrun a giant base, but they could, Fire Base Nancy was big enough to prove a point that we're gonna do you in.
Were you there?
Yes, I was there, I was at the Arvin TOC.
What'd you do?
Well, first of all, we didn't know what to do, because you can't call in artillery where your artillery is. You gotta do hand to hand. The only thing we could do was, being at the TOC, the Arvins had APCs, Armored Personnel Carriers. They had 50 caliber machine guns on them, and in front of the TOC, they were lined up, APCs in front. And back at the American side of the base, it was all hand-to-hand combat. But we actually could call in. They called in saying where they think it's coming from, and where they actually were was in the river bank. In Fubai is where they actually staged their attack at night, in the middle of the night, and nobody would even know it. They came down along the riverbank. They couldn't be detected, and actually started going up the side and through the engineers. Eventually, during the night, they did it slowly. I guess they did it because you couldn't see anything during the day. There was nothing out there during the day. So as soon as it got dark, they started their sneak attack, or zapper attack, as it's called.
Were there guard towers?
You couldn't see them. You couldn't see at night, especially in the monsoons.
Oh, okay.
So once they determined we're being attacked, and it was like chaos. It got down to not knowing who you're shooting at, who you were shooting at, number one. But that's why you had to keep sending flares up to see if they were coming in. So the Vietnamese side, they actually started pumping their APCs, just firing out to the perimeter everywhere. Anything you're shooting out is better than anything else. You couldn't shoot in because you might hit friendlies.
Right.
So finally, after it got contained, you still had all night going through. So they started pumping them. They kept pumping them up all night long, where they think they were coming through.
The flares?
Flares, but then there was hand-to-hand combat, and they actually you couldn't call artillery in at that point because it would be direct. You could do direct fire on the 8-inch. 175s are long barreled howitzers, so they did do direct fire on the 8-inch.
What does that mean?
Direct fire means it's just shooting straight ahead. Not up in the air, direct fire, you're shooting straight.
But
Direct-
outside the camp?
Direct fire, you're shooting straight out, not up in the air. Like
Okay.
shoot straight fire, it's like shooting a rifle. Boom. You're shooting a rifle, you can't point it anywhere, you're just shooting it in the direction of where they could be.
Would it ever get to a point where you would evacuate the base and then do an airstrike?
No. No, because the communication was going back and forth and saying that they think they have it contained they think they got them, they're all dead. Because they kept shooting flares up and everybody kept saying, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And
Did you have MPs that were patrolling the base?
there's no MPs,
Oh, okay.
not on Fire Base Nancy, no. What it was is, it was an attack, waking up a sleeping giant. That's what they did. They woke up a bunch of people who weren't used to this.
Right.
They were used to business as usual, and as usual, they weren't ready, and they didn't have their ammunition ready.
Oh.
They didn't have, and at the base that in my location that night, one of the guys that was with me was one of my guys I worked the radio with, and we had a couple of guys that were there for the night. They were usually at the American side. They were with us because they didn't want to go back because we had room in the bunker. We were underground. We were like 30 feet underground.
Oh.
These guys down here on the base, they're sleeping in hooches above ground. So our bunker was very safe. We're underground with PC plates this thick covering the roof with sandbags on top of that and then more plates on top of that. So we're pretty safe under there because we're the brains of the operation.
So you went under there because the base was being overrun?
No, we were there because that's where the TOC was. That's where
Oh,
the
okay.
radios were. That's where the Arvin's side of the compound
Okay.
was. MACV Advisory.
Right.
So we had the Arvins with their radios, our radios in the compound, and we're underground because it's safe there. Where the guns were, the guns, the howitzers, those guys, they lived in hooches above ground.
You know what this reminds me of is when you described in the jungle how the Arvin said, you stay a little bit away from us.
Yeah, 'cause I had the radio.
Because you couldn't get killed.
Killed
We were
was-
more important, your
It was
job.
more important, right?
It's very interesting.
But if it wasn't for trying to figure out, and actually I looked on a blog on the internet of this Lieutenant Kreutzer, who lives in, I think he lives in Colorado. He put a thing out there, anybody involved, Firebase Nancy Zapper attack, April 13th. And I got in touch with him and let him know. He had even said in his blog that we finally realized that they were coming from the riverbank that night. That's how they mustered at the riverbank in the middle of the night to stage their attack. But he couldn't figure it out. You can't figure this stuff out in the middle of the night.
Because that was a low-lying area?
Right. And Firebase Nancy wasn't a big mountain or anything like it. It was elevated, but it was still easy to get to. I think they wanted to teach people a lesson by attacking us, but it didn't work because the score was 212-3. We won. We lost 3 Americans.
Oh.
And 212 of them we counted. And
Wow, that's a lot.
and I'll tell you that the guy actually a friend of mine was at the TOC that night. He lives in Philadelphia now. He was going to go back to the American side. I said, "You're going to die. You're going to be dead by the time you get down there." First of all, he did have his weapon. He did have ammunition, and he was with another guy. And I didn't know him that well. And they were ready to go out through the side of the Vietnamese compound. And I said, "You guys are crazy. You just stay here. Don't go anywhere. First of all, I mean, you're supposed to be where you are, but you're not going to make it." And I said, "You don't know what's over there on this whole side over here. They could be over there and you don't even know it." And you know what? They sat there behind walls of sandbags all night, and they kept firing every once in a while. You know, when we went there and when the break of dawn, there was a bunch of dead people in there. They were there, waiting for anybody to get up and leave. They're gonna pick you off one by one. They were inside our compound, but they got through the American side. They didn't get through the Vietnamese side. I hate to say it, but it was true.
Oh, okay.
They didn't get through our compound, the TOC side, because they knew there was APC set up all along the front. So if they tacked up there, they'd just mow them right down.
Right.
So if they went through the American side, they knew it would boil down to hand-to-hand combat. And there is a story, and it's in the blog for Firebase Nancy, about the sergeant, who's a famous man because he ran around the side of his hooch, and here he ran right into one of them, and he fired. His gun misfired, and the Vietnamese gun misfired. And it's pouring rain, and he got in hand-to-hand combat. He punched him out, knocked him out, threw him in a Connex, shut the Connex, ran to his hooch, got a grenade, he came back and opened it up and threw it in there and locked it again and ran. And blew him up inside the Connex. It really actually happened, and the blog's all over the internet.
What's a Connex?
Connex is a steel metal thing where you store stuff like a shed. So he locked him in there as a prisoner, and he said, "You know what, I'm not going to take him prisoner." He said, he'll figure out a way to get out of here. So he went back and blew him up. And the next morning, they said there was a tour that everybody went in and said, yeah, it was like hamburger all over the place.
Oh.
But the
So when did you come out of the TOC?
break of dawn, when they started to see daylight, and whoever was left of the North Vietnamese Zapper battalion was a battalion. They were long gone, and there was helicopters flying from one end all over the place. Because people were coming from every area to see what was going on, because it was a big thing. I mean, people in Phu Bai were scared to death. They didn't know what was going on. They could have just easily went right through Phu Bai and wiped them out, the civilians. So they wanted to prove a point and wipe out a base. Americans was what they wanted to do. So they thought anyway. But it didn't work. For some reason, they thought they would get everybody in, and then really they could have overran us if they got 200 and some people inside. But they said by the time I think they drug 45 bodies out of the compound that could made it in. The rest were all killed outside by door gunners and stuff like that coming by
Oh, okay.
from helicopters and stuff like that. And the next day, when the smoke cleared and the sun didn't come out, it just got daylight, they just started dragging bodies, and actually they took all the bodies, took them all down on the main highway, QL1, and lined them up, length of the highway, to show people what's going to happen. That's what they did. I don't know why, but that's where they lined them up, the bodies. So if anybody was Viet Cong or a sympathizer and they wanted to go to the communist side, they were showing you this is what's going to happen to you.
Oh, okay.
They lined the bodies up, and I wish I had the pictures to show you because it's gross.
Right.
Now you'll see in movies them throwing in the piles of bodies and stuff like that, and they would, well, I don't know if they burn them, but what they show you in movies is not what they wanted to make sure that they knew what happened. So they lined the bodies up one by one, lengthwise down the main highway to show people.
And also, like you said earlier about the citizens of Phu Bai, that they were afraid, but they could have been overrun. But then again, now by lining up the bodies, the Phu Bai people are being shown that you'll be protected by the Americans.
And at the same time,
Not an overrun.
you have RFs and PFs, rural forces, and people, and they did have their own forces in these little towns. They did have soldiers. They're called RFs and PFs. And they're the ones that actually look for funny stuff, like with Viet Cong and stuff like that, people who don't belong there. That was their job.
Like a neighborhood watch.
It's like neighborhood watch, and I'm sure they got compensated somehow. I had no idea, but they had somewhat of a uniform of RFs, and they were like cops. Let's put it this way, cops. Now, I have been in situations, being out on another assault out in the jungle, and sometimes they weren't major ones. They were just regular run-of-the-mill assaults, going out and you're going on patrol. And we'd go through villages where some of the people lived that were in the army, and we found some horrific things. The elders of they were skinned and hung upside down by whoever did it. Viet Cong, North Vietnam, regulars, and the villagers were all gone. They were gone. And you would find dead bodies hanging upside down, hung, skinned. That's just to show, I don't know why they did it, but whoever, they were just showing you want Americans, you want to be, this is what's going to happen to you. That was their retaliation, I guess. Because I guess they actually knew that some of the soldiers lived in these little hamlets. You'd go to a little town, like hamlets in the jungle, or like you're going down little dirt roads and paths. You do it back then in the 70s, well, not even 70 yet. It was all dirt. Everything was dirt roads, but it was a little village, hamlets. You want to call it a hamlet, and they each had their own little towns. and they belonged to these little towns till they had to go in the army. So I used to go to these little hamlets here and there, and then one particular one we went to one time wasn't for a visit, it was business, and they were all the villagers were gone except for the ones that were dead, hanging upside down. It was scary, it really was, to see that they could do that to a human, just to prove a point.
Right. Barbaric and no respect for life.
No respect for life, and that's what happens. You want to be I guess they call them American sympathizer. That's what's going to happen to you. And I guess that's why that's why I watch all these movies, to see what's real and what they really think happened. And they'll find a little town and they have enough rice to feed an army and stuff like that. That's just for movies. If they did find something like that, yeah, they are harboring NVA or VC. And they usually put that in movies. But these little hamlets and all, they're just people, farmers and stuff like that, just trying to make a living.
So what part of Vietnam were you in mostly? Was it the Central Highlands?
I Corps, North Vietnam,
Oh, okay.
which I believe starts from Da Nang, goes all the way up to Dong Ha. And when I used to go to Citadel, which was in Quang Tri, and Quang Tri was kind of like totally destroyed.
Can you spell that?
Quangtri, Quang Tri.
And there was a base called Citadel?
Well, it's a citadel. That's where a citadel would be, where mostly like MACV advisory would be, and the brains of the operation.
Where
in-
was Quang
Quang Tri was north of Phu Bai, basically. The highest point you can go and to have a so-called established town in North Vietnam is Dong Ha, and I was in Dong Ha.
What was that like?
Very boring. Nothing happened when I was there at all. Nothing.
Highest point, you mean like on a mountain?
DMZ. Your next step is North Vietnam. You can't go any further than Dong Ha before you go. You can't go any further or you'd be in serious trouble. You're looking for trouble. Now, I don't know why. Why they didn't attack North Vietnam? Because there's too much worry about being attacked in South. I don't understand it. And there's a lot of things I don't understand about the war, and I never will, and I don't think anybody ever will, is why we just didn't go after them. I really don't. Why didn't we just bomb Hanoi?
Like a Douglas MacArthur kind of?
Because I just didn't understand it. And another thing, and I'm not complaining about it, is how guys like my age, they're 19, would get there, and people who were in the Army for life would stay in the base, and the new guys would be going out to do the dirty work. You know, some guys got a little bit upset over that. Why?
The least experienced?
The least experienced did the dirty jobs, and the guys who joined the Army for a living would be sitting back in the base having not a good old time, but they weren't exactly in too much danger. Just kind of like rubbed you the wrong way. And after a while, it bugged me. And that's why I was kind of glad I was with the situation I was in, because I guess people did get disgruntled over situations like that. And
Sure.
I was told at one point, and I'm not going to complain, that when I went back out, after being out there for 54 days, I'm going back out for another 20 days, that another guy who was supposed to go out with me was married. He had too much to lose. Hey, I have a right to live,
Right.
even though I don't have a wife or kids, but it happened. I was sent out again. But I survived. I'm not complaining because I'm back, and that's all I can say. But it wasn't right, but who are you going to question it with?
Right.
And then, every once in a while, my friends from the American side of the compound, and Nancy's, they'd come up and visit me, and they weren't always allowed to come up, and they said, "Can I stay here?" No, you can't stay here. They wanted to stay.
In the bunker?
In the bunker. And one time I actually went out on an assault with what do you call it, journalist from Switzerland. He was a riot, this guy. He was a Swiss journalist. He went out, he brought him, the captain, the Australian captain, he came out with us. And he actually was shown, and he went out, and we only got in a few firefights, was nothing big. And there was a small body count, and he took pictures and all. And when he came back after it was only like 11 days, he was he stayed in my bunker. And he actually showed me a picture of somebody who shot him. I just took a picture of a guy who shot him. This guy was a riot. He got patched up, he got shot in the shoulder and the arm. And he actually, he was a...
So he was taking so many pictures.
He actually took the picture of the guy who shot him. And he showed me the guy. And I said, well, what do you have? He said, oh, they got him, they killed him. But they got that close in the firefight, and it wasn't us, he was
He
with...
got so into it, he forgot his own safety.
Well, he didn't even have a weapon. They didn't have weapons. Like,
Right.
well, you'll see in We Were Soldiers, what's his name? Barry Pepper. He ended
Oh,
up
yeah.
being a fighter. He was fighting in that movie. I'm going to look into that and find out if that's true or not. You know, it probably was, but here a journalist, and I don't know if you saw the movie. Did you see We Were Soldiers?
I know Barry Pepper.
It was pretty. He did a really good job. Well, he is an actor. He was very choked up about almost dying, and anybody would get choked up of almost dying and being overrun. And
What
This-
about Brian Williams? He said, I was in that helicopter. Iraq.
that's a different war.
It's very strange, yeah.
Very,
You get caught up in it.
but being no, it's like they said. I guess they named World War I because they knew there was gonna be another, right? There's always gonna be a problem somewhere. But Vietnam, with those helicopters, I mean, you get to the point where I can't stand the sound of a helicopter. I mean, it doesn't bother me a lot, but it gets my attention.
The wop, wop, wop.
You ought to try talking to them on those things, especially when you're getting shot at. Those things are so loud, and you know when you're going down. You know when it doesn't. When you're on the side and something's not right, you know, they're going so fast. You can just sit sideways in there, and you're not going to fall out because of the centrifugal force. That's why you see guys sitting on the end. They're not going to fall out because the force bringing them in.
Oh, now I get what you were saying earlier when the helicopter went slow is when...
Then when you go
could've fallen
sideways
out.
and you start losing, oh, something's wrong here. Doesn't look good. This doesn't feel good. You know something's going on. And when you're going down. We're going down. We're all going down eventually. But boom, out I went.
No parachutes.
Nah, no parachutes. But actually, if I'm sure helicopters are used everywhere still. But the amount of helicopters going in for a combat assault, one after another, it's like you're talking like 50 choppers going in. And it's like, it's awesome. It really is. And the next thing you know, you got 300 or 400 troops on the ground, scattered everywhere. It's got to be an awesome sight. And to be a part of it, like, this is really happening. But it is. It's so loud. It's unbelievable. You can't describe the loudness of it.
Your hearing's pretty good, by the way.
My hearing is, but my eye, I wish my eyes were my eye.
Oh yeah, what was the lasting effect from the
Pardon?
branch, when the branch hit your eye, when
Oh, no, it's just a cut.
you can see okay?
No, I'm fine. It's just my eyes are just going from being old.
You don't seem old.
But, when I did, there's only two people, actually, let me see now. Two people I've seen in Vietnam and I've seen here in what we'll call the world. One of them was the mailman who lives in Philly now.
Huh.
And he used to live in Wisconsin. And the only other guy I've ever seen in Vietnam was a sergeant when I was out of Nam and back home and had to go back to 7 more months in Washington State, was a sergeant. And I have a picture of him, and he's probably no longer on earth. But other than that, haven't seen anybody from Vietnam other than two people.
Oh.
And then now all of a sudden, I think a lot of people want to find each other, and
Right.
I've been trying to find one of my best friends in Vietnam, and I don't know whether he's alive or dead.
What's his name?
Terrence N. Cobb,
Cobb?
C-O-B-B.
Where's he from?
He's from Lompoc, California, Lompoc. Same rank as me, Spec 4. He's like, we were like almost similar. We like
Radio?
baseball. He volunteered to replace me. He's a nut. He drove the Colonel's Jeep. He got tired of it. I have a picture of on my slide projector of Grinstead, who drove the Colonel's Jeep. And when Cobb came in the country, Grinstead got sent back to the world. He got to be the Colonel's driver, and he couldn't stand that brass spit and polish. He wanted to get his hands dirty and be one of the regular guys. He was just like me. He was a gun bunny in artillery, and he volunteered to be liaison, get on the radio, and actually replaced me in the field. He didn't have to, but he did once. And I can't find him. I've been tried looking all over, and he might not be in California anymore, but I tried finding him on the internet. I just can't find him. And the other guy I met who lives in Philly now, his name's Kevin Bollig. He tried in vain to find him also. And Lompoc is like a little town outside Santa Barbara, a fancy place in California, and couldn't find him. Now the mailman is from Wisconsin, and he told me a funny story. His town is so small. His nickname in Mazomania, Wisconsin, after Vietnam, was Mailman. And he told me, if you write Mailman on a letter and put Mailman, Mazomania, Wisconsin, he'll get the letter. And he did. That's how small his town was.
Oh, okay.
But now he lives in Philadelphia. His wife took a big job in Children's Hospital, so he moved. But wish I could find more people I was in Vietnam with, but I just don't know where they are. And people are trying, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
You never know.
No, there was a Ralph White who was attacked, Firebase Nancy. Now, I didn't realize that he lost both his legs. I didn't know that.
Someone told you?
I saw it on the internet. I saw his name and I knew who he is. But I didn't know he lost his legs.
How'd you see it on the internet?
I just looked up Firebase Nancy, April 13th attack, and he was there. And then I saw later on when he started talking in his blog about losing his legs, and I didn't know that. You got it taken away. You didn't know how these
Right.
guys. Here you are in the middle of nowhere, and you don't know what's happening. And I think the mortality rate, I think they said 95% of the people who made it through the night survived. In anybody who went to a hospital in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
The nurses were that good.
Right.
And the backup facilities, wherever they were taken. Just getting them there before they bled to death was another thing. But when I read it, I never knew he lost his legs. I knew who the guy was. But I didn't know he lost his legs, and I felt bad for him. 'Cause he was a good old boy who was on the guns.
We had one Vietnam vet in a wheelchair who lost both his legs there, and he had been a football hero in high school. He's from Long Branch.
Long Branch?
It happened with the RPG. He saw it coming too. So it is a miracle that lives can be saved when something like that happens.
You know, when you go through, you always have to make some, not humor out of it, but bright sides. Well, when this guy was telling me about taking a picture of the guy who shot him, and I showed a lot of the American guys he gave me the picture, and I gave it back to him, and they couldn't believe it. He was joking about it. They wouldn't know how to handle it. First of all, they never were in the jungle. They were on guns. They were in the base. They never made it in the jungle. Well, you're kind of in the jungle, but not in the tri-canopy jungle itself.
Oh.
That's a different way of life. I mean, you've ever been in tri-canopy jungle? It's wild.
What about like tigers and monkeys?
There's all kinds of birds and snakes and stuff like that. monkeys, no tigers. But you know what? We used to have entertainment. We always had dogs because, you know, when you have, a lot of people have dogs at home for protection, to let you know something's wrong. Well, you know what? At Firebase Nancy, when things are normal and a normal wake-up call, when they used to go to formation, all the dogs would go. Everybody had a dog, or there was dogs, there's plenty of roast beef for feeding dogs. They wouldn't even eat dog food that came in a can. They looked at you, what are you, crazy? I'm not eating this. You sent me dog food, right? And they wouldn't eat it.
Oh, wow.
But there'd be dog fights every day, and everybody had a name. I had a dog named LD, and his original name was Pissiels, because he would come right up to you and piss right on your feet. So they called him Pissiels. But they would be fights. And there was one dog never wanted to fight. His name was Loser. We called him Loser. But all the dogs came from the same litters, and they would come around every formation, and they would have dog fights, and they'd start betting on a case of beer who'd win or lose the fight. But you know what? There was good reason to have those dogs on the base, because they would bark when there was something wrong. I mean, just like anything else. And one of the guys that was down there in the engineer's side said the dogs were acting weird. And the guys on the guns, one guy had a dog named Thumper from the guns. He said his dog was acting weird too. So they knew something was out there. But you know, normally you know something's wrong from a village. If you're in a bad village, you would know something's not right that day or something. There was a clean village. There was no VC harboring or anything. They would have no idea there was something going on because this was real. But those dogs knew something was wrong that night. They knew something was out there. And they were he said he was acting wiry all night. Like he could smell something. They knew something was coming.
I was going to say, could you smell the enemy
I couldn't.
based on their diet or?
Nope, not me. Maybe the dogs knew something was up.
Mm-hmm.
They're used to mongoose and running around, or rats. There's rats all over the place. From garbage, of course. It's normal. Those rats are pretty big. But he said the dogs were acting weird that night. So they were probably inching their way up to attack Nancy that night. And like I said, it's a good thing it was caught when it was caught. And we only lost 3 Americans, but 3 was too many. And I actually only knew one guy really good. His name was Phelps. I knew him from a day-to-day thing when I was on base. I'd see him here and there getting food or whatever. It's the only guy I actually knew that I saw on a daily basis when I was on base that actually got killed. Unfortunately, he was the same age as me. He didn't join the Army. He was just the wrong place at the wrong time. He was a gunner.
Sorry.
But some of the guys didn't make it back, and the ones that did were grateful they did. And I'll tell you, if you find many of them complaining, I don't think you'll find too many, but there'll always be stories they're going to tell you, and a little griping here and there. But basically, when you make it back and you still got 2 arms and 2 legs, and you know your brain, you're all in one piece, you're happy. Mm-hmm. And you know what? No regrets. No regrets it ever happened. Would I re-up and do it again? No. But you know what? The resentment. And I'm sure you've heard stories of guys when they got back to the U.S. We didn't kind of like get too much of... we knew we weren't going to be heroes. We got resentment. We didn't want to be heroes because we didn't expect to be heroes. It wasn't World War II or anything like that. But there's certain people, and they weren't hippies or just regular people that were against the war, saying nasty stuff towards us, at airports. And it was hard to take, it really was.
That happened at your homecoming?
It did in Seattle, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier you were stationed in Washington State?
Washington State, Fort Lewis.
Okay. And what was your job there?
Actually, they assigned us to teach ROTC, artillery. That's what we were doing. And it was like just like any other duty station, except your job was different as the groups came. You would show them, they would fire, how to show them how to do it, with the weapons and all, the artillery pieces.
So that was for 7 months?
7 months.
Did your family come out to see you, or Joanne?
I came home, and this was the weird part, that when we got into Fort Lewis, there were processes. We were getting 30 days. We just came back from a war.
Right.
And for some reason, this guy who was processing this was a real, I'll just call him a creep. He was, I don't know if he had a bad day, he was stationing everybody to Fort Lewis. You're stationed in Fort Lewis. I said, Fort Lewis, this is where I am. He says, yeah. I said, oh. I said, well, I'm from Philadelphia and I got a 30-day leave. He goes, yeah, here's your bus ticket, $2 to Fort Lewis. I spent my own money to fly home.
I've heard that before too.
And that was annoying. We had a bus ticket for $2 to get to the next duty station. But he also made a mistake. My day in to report back for duty was the same day I got in country. He made a mistake. So I sat home waiting for my orders. I called up and he said, yeah, you're right. Don't wait for your orders to come. So I said, they called from Fort Lewis. Said, where are you at? I said, I'm waiting for my orders. They said, your orders are for Fort Lewis. Report to Fort Lewis. I said, yeah, the same day I arrived from Vietnam. I'm going to report for duty. Oh, yeah. Oh, he was supposed to add a month onto that. No, you're supposed to get 30 days off and report back the next day.
Okay.
So I got a couple extra weeks out of it anyway.
Oh, good for you.
But that was it. But I had to pay my own way to get back out there again.
That doesn't make sense.
It cost me a fortune back then. That was a lot of money to fly back and forth from Philadelphia.
But when you think about when you first went in, they provided your transportation. So why?
Because that's where my next duty station was. So there, I guess by the code or wherever you're stationed next, they don't care whether you go home. You could stay here for the next 30 days, take your own leave, stay here. So all they're going to pay you allocated for was to go to your next duty station.
Is it because it's stateside and not going overseas?
Because I don't know. But it happened to a lot of guys.
It doesn't make sense.
Made no sense, but, well, it made a lot of sense. It made like $100 and some to fly home and fly back that I didn't expect to pay, but it didn't make much money in the Army. And then when you're in Vietnam, you can still want much to spend your money on, but you didn't make much back then. You got paid MPC. A case of soda cost 30 cents and a case of beer cost 90 cents. But it was alarming to find out that I paid my own airfare home, but it was all right. I survived. That's all I care about.
So how good was it to go home for those weeks?
Oh, it was great, back to normal. And, I guess I acted strange for a while coming from Vietnam, and but it didn't take long to get back right into the nitty gritty.
That's good.
Just
Did
glad
you
to be
need
home.
to decompress?
Yeah, and then I wasn't really looking forward to, a lot of guys said to themselves, I'm going to extend in Vietnam. I don't want to put up with this Army any longer. So they extended 2 more months to stay in Vietnam for like 14 or 15 months. I wasn't going to risk it. Not what I was doing.
Right.
No way. I said, I'm going home. I'm getting out of here while I can, because the next thing I know, I'll be out and I might not be as lucky
Right.
as I'd been. And, I'll just call it that, luck.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you had a pretty easy job, and then any experience of being in Washington State, I didn't want to be there for 7 months. I'd rather be going back to my old job and doing this and that. But it was another experience being in another part of the country and another leg in the Army of
Sure.
teaching somebody what I learned.
We never talked about, what was your old job?
I was in production planning, purchasing,
Oh, okay.
in a manufacturing environment.
In Philly?
In Philadelphia, yeah, and I did get my old job back when I got out of service, which was no problem.
That's really nice.
And now back then, I was a hero when my old company.
You were?
I was not a hero, but they were glad to see me back, and they're happy that I did what I did and all.
It's like they watched you grow up, right? From
Yeah, because it was a
grade
mom and pop company back then. Mom and you either knew a father, you had a relative in the company, or you didn't get in the company. It was one of those old companies. It was a big company.
to- How long did you stay with them?
12 years until I knew they were moving. They were going to go down south, so you either get drugged down with the company or go find another job. So,
Did you use your GI benefits?
oh yeah.
What'd you use it for?
Well, not as much education, which I should, but I did get an early out to go to college. Thanks to Joanne, she got me into community college, so I didn't have to drag 7 months. And what the really bad part is, in the 7 months, when I turned in more early out to go to college, the guy, the sergeant, was so upset that we were trying to get early outs to go to, because we figured out, let's go to college and get out of here. Because you're just stagnating, we're not going to re-up or anything like that. They started putting us on KP.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
A little punishment there.
Punishment. But we got even with that. We went right to the IG. You're going to put Vietnam vets,
Right, I've heard of that too, yeah.
you're going to put us on in every day washing pots and pans when we're supposed to be training ROTC and stuff like that. They got
Right.
here. But you know what? The colonel just said they're doing their normal function until they get out. Their ETS date to send them back to school. You know what? They earned it.
Right.
That was it. The sergeant did get a little heat over it.
Was the colonel a Vietnam vet too?
Oh yeah. Yep. He was 3 campaigns he went to. In my brigade anyway. They usually were pretty, Colonel at Firebase Nancy, I forgot to mention, he got shot down. This is my friend Cobb, he was to drive him around at the time when he used to fly around to the different fire bases. He got shot down with my friend Mr. Quick. It was a CW4, John Quick. He used to drop me off at these destinations from, not in the jungle, he used to drop me off from the Citadel or Dong Ha or Quang Tri or Wei. If he was in the area, he would stop by, and he died with the colonel.
Oh.
Got shot down at Firebase Barber. Mr. Quick, with our mail. They got our mail. Or our mail disappeared. And the colonel went down at Firebase Barber with Mr. Quick. And Mr. Quick, he was an officer, a chief warrant officer, but he was a funny guy, and he used to just he used to scare the death out of me in his luge, flying up and down the Gulf.
Why was he called Mr.?
That's what they were called, misters. The warrant officer was a mister.
I have heard that. We
Yeah,
have
like-
a chief in charge, but no one calls him Mr.
Like Mr. Roberts in the Navy. Remember Mr. Roberts? Well, I don't know why they put back then, but a warrant officer is called Mr., not Sir. They used to call him Mr. Quick, Mr.
Oh, okay.
But
It's
he
unusual.
used to, you know what? Getting a ride in a helicopter was a lot quicker than driving up. I used to have a truck assigned to me, but I wasn't allowed to take it everywhere. I could take it some places, but you know what? There was a couple times where when Captain Smalley, the captain, volunteered to pull a radio shift, you're able to go explore a little bit, up and down, go to in friendly areas.
Right.
Just be able to drive up and down QL1, go to Quang Tri, go to Wei, if you wanted to. I mean, it was safe during the day. It was nice to have a vehicle to do it in, but it was nicer to have somebody drive you in a helicopter to your next duty station. And then call them, try to find a ride home that way instead of riding in a truck. Yeah, because anything could happen. So I can remember one of the guys ran over a dog in a village. That was the end of the world for him. He ran over a dog. Driving his vehicle, they got the license number. The guy got in trouble over it. Because it was like business as usual going through these little villages. And, you couldn't break the law or it was a war.
Right.
You just did what you had to do. You didn't stop in there and party or anything. There was no bars in Vietnam. It's just, just like each little town you came, you just had to handle it like with kid gloves and find out what was going on. If you didn't know the town, you didn't stop.
Well, can you describe if there was a level of stress that you sustained each day for that year and how you coped with it? Like your cortisol levels must have been high, like always being aware of your surroundings and always needing to know that you'll survive and what you needed to do for that to happen.
Well, just worrying about waking up in the morning, not getting bombed or whatever, attacked.
Did you get good sleep?
Yeah, you felt pretty much safe. You get complacent though. Like look what happened on April 13th in the pouring rain. They never expected that to happen. So after that, you get a little nervous because you know what? Anything like that happens, you think they'll never think this will happen again. Let's do it again. They'll never expect it. So yeah, that was in the back of your mind from then on. Mm-hmm. Hey, this could happen again. So it was after that.
Yeah.
Been very aware of what was going on. But prior to that, it was like kind of people got laid back in their function. Thinking that, oh, nothing can happen here. We're too big. No, it happened.
Right.
And it could happen again. So people woke up, and then, like you said, got nervous and things of that. Like, I think it woke up a lot of people that were actually getting too laid back about the situation. I mean, some people thought the whole thing was sitting there drinking beer and shooting the crap all the time and on the base.
Forget where they are.
Forget where you are.
Yeah.
Exactly. You couldn't forget where you were. There's a war. Mm-hmm. And element of surprise always happens.
And it's actually their country, so they know the terrain better.
And they wanted the South because it was fertile. I guess that's why the whole thing started.
Oh, okay.
The Mekong Delta, with all those tributaries down there, and
Rice paddies.
that's where all the food came from. And I guess that's the North wanted the South, or it wouldn't have been that the way it was.
It's interesting.
But with the funny parts, teaching the Vietnamese guys I was with baseball, they loved it. Throwing baseballs with them. And I actually got a hold of a baseball bat one that we got a bat from you. Somebody got a bat and we started playing, but they loved playing baseball. They couldn't understand it. Mm-hmm. But when they started, they would get so excited. Just showing them how to learn how to catch a baseball, let alone hitting it. Then they really, it was fun. It was a riot. I mean, they were really nice people, and it's a shame that and they could make anything work. They could make something out of nothing. Their ingenuity was unbelievable. And
they appreciated life better than.
Oh, they loved it. They were funny people. They were the loving people. Mm-hmm. It's all families, and there was no wealth in these towns. But the little things like just throwing baseball, they thought that was. They used to talk about. They used to see it on films, but they never believed it could actually happen. They never saw it in Vietnam playing baseball or throwing a football. They used to love it. But just including them, it was nice to bring some of them down to the American. If they had a little bit of a pig roast or something like that, they used to love it. Being part of the Americans, because they wanted to. Bottom line, they wanted to all come to America. So that was inevitable that they would like to hang around with Americans and be part of it. But they were nice people.
What was Vietnam like when you left in 70? When was that in 70?
Gosh, it was around Christmas time. November, was it, when I left? I think it was November. I got home for Christmas, almost Christmas time. It was ice freezing when I got home. It was like early December. Like the beginning of December. And I was freezing. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other stories you want to share?
Pretty much that.
Joanne, did he leave anything out? Do you want to get in the? No. Okay.
Sheesh. But I wish I could find more guys I was stationed with. I tried finding them. One guy lives in Philly now, and he had a pretty easy job what he was doing. And most guys did have, not a hard, none of the jobs were easy, but it was a lot easier than going in the jungle, let's put it that way. It was safer, they had a safer job. But I'd really like to get in touch with some of the guys that was stationed in Vietnam with. Because they'll never forget April 13th, because I know I won't. Just some things you put out of your mind, but not everything.
Right.
Just glad to be home in one piece.
And I'm sure it helped to have someone to help you get over that whole experience as far as going from military to civilian life, having your job back, and the support you had there, the support from Joanne and your family.
Yeah, it was good.
Would help you do better than some other veterans did when they got back, if they didn't have any of those things that I just listed.
Yeah, it was good to be family, had to help you get back into the way of life again.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't waste too much time to get back to work.
Right.
I went back pretty quickly.
Nobody tiptoed around you. They
No,
just made you do the normal jobs you ever did, like chores and things like that. Did you have your own place?
I still lived with my parents when I got home, but I wasn't long after that. I went through I was only like a year or so, and then my brother got killed by a hit by a car, and then
I'm so sorry.
that was bad for the family. And then my mom got cancer, and then my brother was only like 11,
Oh my gosh.
and it took my mother, and then she got cancer, and it just killed her. And then my father finally, after a while, he was driving me crazy after my mom died, and we were both working in the same place. He was driving
Oh,
me
that's
crazy, and I
right.
may have been driving him crazy. I said, "Wait," he said, "I think I met another woman." I said, "Thank God, I'm out of here." I thought, now I can get an apartment and get out of here.
Did you use your GI benefits for that?
No, I just got
Oh,
an
you just got an
apartment until I used my GI benefits to buy my house.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great.
Waited till I got my feet on the ground, got a little taste of my own first apartment. Then I moved into the center city, Philadelphia, during the bicentennial, got a
Wow.
high rise.
Wow, nice.
And then they actually wanted us to buy them or you had to move out.
Oh.
I wish I would have bought it, but I didn't. Because it was the 30th floor of an apartment, looking over the whole city of Philadelphia. It was beautiful. Then I decided, I rented one more year, and then I bought a house using the GI Bill.
So it sounds like you didn't have any reunions, but did you join any veteran groups?
I joined one for PTSD, and then actually I went there for a while, and Dave Grady, one of the guys, passed away, and then the guy who got me into the group, Norm Johnson from Veterans, he passed away, and he gave me all kinds of veterans books to read. And Joanne knew him pretty good too, and he passed away. I kind of like filtered out of the group because, too many other things to do, and it's just like anything else. It's like an alcoholic going to an AA meeting. You get tired of going to those things after a while, because just repetition, you know what I mean?
Was that through the VA?
Yeah, it was. Post-trauma stress disorder was in Yardley, Pennsylvania. I used to go to group sessions up there. Yeah, because, it did bother, still does here and there.
Because you kind of faced your own mortality, especially at Nancy, right?
The guy had led the group, but he lost both his legs, and Dave Grady, he passed away. And the guy who led the group was a big VA guy, he passed away.
Do you get a stipend?
I'm 50% disabled.
Well, I'm glad that you got recognized for what you went through and that you're getting something.
Well, one thing that I remember in the beginning was I can remember standing in the jungle thinking I was going to be left. Remember I said I thought I was in great shape? That was the worst
Oh,
part.
that's right.
I thought they were going to leave. I mean, they were disappearing in front of me.
There's nobody that pulls you along, make sure you come with them.
Well, there was, but I didn't
was?
really realize it, that
Really?
they had to be behind because he didn't want anybody following you. But I was like, carrying, I was in good shape, but carrying that stuff up and down these mountains and going, it's 90 some degrees and it's the sweat. And, I'm thinking, they're going to leave me. And I was afraid. I knew it wasn't going to, I didn't realize they had to be behind me, troops behind me, but I thought one day, they're going to leave me here. But I just kept me incentive to keep going.
Oh, okay.
But that was scary thing. Can you imagine being left behind in the jungle in the middle of nowhere?
So that's something that you've relived.
Yes, being left in, and in reality, they weren't going to leave me because I had a radio on my back and stuff like that, but I never had to feel, radio's a radio, they got another one. But just thinking of being left behind and getting lost could happen. Where they all go to, because these guys are used to humping up and down the mountains, I'm not. So just think, when you think you're in shape, you're not, believe me. And I wasn't a smoker or anything like that back then. I was 19, you're supposed to be in good shape. So that kind of was scary.
Well, you did say that boot camp was easy for you because you were in good shape.
It was, and my best friend, the guy I went through in boot camp that I went to grade school with, he was a runner, and I beat him in the 5-mile race. He was never an athlete. He was a hockey player. He never played baseball or football or anything. He did nothing but play hockey and run. And I actually beat him in the 5-mile run for the PT test.
Oh, okay.
That was just a personal victory, that's all. People like to run. That's running all the time. That's what you call a personal sport. You don't have to worry about somebody messing up in personal baseball. Somebody can mess up, you can lose. Running, you're on your own.
Yeah.
So you do what if you want to be the best at running or something else, you get your personal best being a runner.
So how are you doing now?
Fine.
You seem like it, yeah.
As long as if I find out from senile, I'm getting senile because I can't find my dead body pictures, but I will find them.
Oh, okay.
Grab the pictures.
And
There's slides.
I'll bring them in, and I'll tell you, these will open your eyes. And actually, these pictures actually have pictures of the guns, the howitzers and all. And actually some of the people that I was stationed with. I just wish you could see those pictures, because these pictures go from the base down to the village. So you can see the villagers, the people in Fubai, all walking by, seeing all these dead bodies laying around. And I can remember them coming up. Number 10 night. I said, number 10 night is right, because
What does that mean?
bad night.
So by saying a number, it means a word?
One is, number 1 means good for the Vietnamese. Number 10 is no good.
Okay.
So that's what we realized when
What did your name mean? 554, was it?
554 was my call sign.
But what words did 5 and 4 mean?
They didn't mean anything. It was just my coordinates for
Right.
And I used to have to call. I had contacts with the Citadel with initials. We would just they would call me, the mailman from Wisconsin who lives in Philly now. He would call me Kilo Mike Alpha, phonetic alphabet. And he was another Kevin Bowling. He'd be Kilo Bravo. So the first time I got in touch with him, Kilo Mike Alpha, he knew 554 also. It was a riot. But I can remember, you're going all through the night. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and you doze off. And what you didn't want to doze off, but the Vietnamese guys I was with in the TOC, we could, 554, 554, and I'm like, radio. And he says, no, wake up. I would doze off. I thought I missed my call sign. 554, and I call mission. I'd be in big trouble. I mean, you can't fall asleep.
Oh, right.
That's what he was saying. I was like, what did I miss? I'm like, no. I would start.
Do you still relive that? That you might have missed a call?
And on occasion, but when he would, they would be Vietnamese, if they got caught sleeping on duty or on the radio or something, I don't know what they would do, something bad to them. They'd be in big trouble. I'm going to say they're going to kill them, but they wouldn't be sweet what they did to them. They were very strict. And
Right.
those guys.
You have to learn a lesson.
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, but to say there was no partying where they were. The American compound, and when you're safe and back at the compound, you're going to have your beers, and it's a different atmosphere. Those guys, they had to do everything by the book, no clowning around. I mean, they were strapped.
Because it was their future.
it was their life. And we used to really get me upset. When I used to hear people come out of a clear blue sky and say Marvin the Arvin. If there was a battle, they'd run the other way.
Oh, okay.
Untrue. I would
a good
just,
point.
I feel like punching the people out.
I've never heard Marvin Arvin.
And they would say, oh, they would run the other way if there was trouble. Untrue. They would not, I would just really go up, get me irritated,
Right.
because I knew better. I lived with them. And I did live with them.
That's right. You bonded with them.
I did bond with them, and they were my friends.
All right, Kevin, before we look at your pictures, I just want to say that I'm honored and humbled that you're here today.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to do this, and I'm gonna be doing it, I'll be bringing back more pictures,
Okay.
hopefully, when I find them.
And thank you for speaking to us of your sacrifice and contribution that you made in service to our country. And thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much.
And welcome home.
Thank you. Well, welcome back to the world, as they would say.
Welcome back to the world. I love it. Good job.
Thank you.
I'm recording now. That's to you. And where are
That's
you?
me, and I was like a little, probably 19 and a half at this point, and I remember going out for about 14 days. And I wasn't too happy about it.
You look so young.
But knowing it was only 14 days, it wasn't as bad. It was like almost like a vacation, like I said, not 50 some days. This is Fire Base Nancy, and there's not much activity there because it's the middle of the day. I wish I had, that's one of the dogs. That you can see all the casings from the rounds. We used to build walls around it. These are the hooches where these guys live. I was underground.
Right.
But once in a while, I would go in one of these and not make it home because I just wanted to sit there and talk with the guys.
Are you taking the pictures?
At this point, I'm taking this picture because
Right.
I'm not in it, or
Right.
I would have one of my buddies, Cobb or Coder, would take the pictures. This is Captain Smalley, the Millionaire's Party.
Oh, okay.
He threw a party and hired he got all the food and got a Korean group he hired through somebody through the village, just gave them all the money and said send them up, and they did. I love it running into that.
Is that a base?
That is the side view. That's not, yeah, that's the base from the Arvin side, going towards the little road going down to the fire base. That's the little road, dirt road that's from the Arvin compound going to Fire Base Nancy. It's all Fire Base Nancy, but you had to go through a checkpoint. There's 2 checkpoints. That's just on the side of the road before you went in it. That's off of QL1. This is the party. Captain Smalley's party.
Did you ever have USO?
No, we had Captain Smalley though. No, we were too small.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm trying to remember his name. He's an officer, but that's not Captain Smalley. You can tell because he's reading. You can tell there's an officer, he's reading. We should joke about that. That's his party.
That's for the soup, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pho's the Vietnamese soup, DHO.
There's the only other, that's Sergeant Tucker. And that's Grinstead, the guy who Cobb replaces the colonel's driver. That's the only other guy I saw in Fort Lewis. I was in the same, and he got in a fight with the guy who assigned us to KP because we were getting early out. Sergeant Tucker was a great guy. He went right after him, and he was his boss. He wasn't afraid of him.
Oh,
That's Ray Carter from New York. He's a Brooklyn boy. Yeah, my dog, I had a dog that looked like a wolf. He never lost a fight, never. Then they found out it was like half wolf. I took a picture in the rearview mirror of my truck.
a selfie.
A selfie, oh my God, I did a selfie back in 70, I did a selfie. Now, First off, it's a no way, very good girls from, if they didn't know somebody from the Arvin side, they would never get in our base. They were cleaners and picking up laundry.
She looks dressed up.
They're all dressed up.
Wow.
That's when I first got there, and that was Cobb driving his Jeep. He took the picture, I'm taking it for granted right now. He had to, because that's his Jeep, Colonel's Jeep. That's another one from the party. Party, of course. One of the many dogs. Wait a minute. That's the wolf. Never lost a fight. Doesn't look like a dog, does it?
Until he was eating all the chickens, I had to get rid of him.
I need a bunch of chickens to get on already. Never lost a dog fight, though. That's Firebase Nancy going into it. This one, it looks like bad time monsoons. Because of a long party. Yeah, you could lay in that, you would fry in that sun with that white sand. That's TOC.
Yeah.
That was a long party. That's a typical hooch that they slept in. Anyone wants to dog fight?
Is that you?
That's me. That's the American compound. Having a catch. Baseball.
Is that a guard tower?
That's a guard tower.
Where is that?
That's on the American side. There's another one from the other side. Both sides.
Oh, but even though there was a guard tower, you couldn't see at night?
You couldn't see anything at night. Not in pouring rain. Nothing. And actually, they should have never built those hooches so close together. Because they were right on top of each other. Laundry day. There's somebody who's got dandruff.
Must have been a good party.
It was a good party.
Took enough pictures.
It went from like 3 in the afternoon till it got dark. That's Terry Cobb. And we all inherited these beach chairs. We took them from Camp Evans and brought them up to Firebase Nancy. And somehow they just got passed along. That's Firebase Nancy. That's Thumper. I don't know what he was doing. That's Cobb in the back.
It's a beautiful dog.
Monsoon time. That's
How can you
That's
tell?
the chopper that went down with the colonel. That's his chopper. That chopper went down with Mr. Quick and the colonel. That's Grinstead, the colonel's first driver before Cobb. That's Piss Heels. You know what happened at Piss Heels?
It's pretty.
They all dressed. Piss Heels used to guard me at night on the radio. One time, the big shot Dowie Bond went by and Piss Heels bit him. 2 days later, my dog died. Poisoned. So, they did. The only thing I can figure out, they poisoned him. That's a cleaner picking up the laundry. That's monsoons. That was my truck for supplies.
I wrote my name on the front of it.
Oh, that's nice.
And I used to take it down the river in Fubai and drive it out in the riverbank and wash it.
Look at the dog has a peace symbol on its neck.
That's Thumper.
I see that, yeah.
Thumper could beat him.
So,
That's the night of the party. There's the band. It was you too. It's a repeat, isn't it? It looks like a dress. There's what you call resupplying. Go to the PX once a month, and just load the back up. And all you could get was Coke and Schlitz, and that was it. Coke was 30 cents a case, and beer was 60 cents a case. I don't know what happened there. This is in the Vietnamese bunker, in the TOC.
So that's where you were with the Vietnamese?
Yep. It's dark underground.
Were you guys high school sweethearts?
Yeah.
Oh,
We had a tower back there.
That's it?
thank you so much for bringing those.
We'll
He
bring
has
that
the
for a little bit of remodeling in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not many people know about this on the outside.
No, I don't know, it's kind of, trying to get the word out there.
So you would never heard. Her brother, who was in college when I got drafted in 1969, 69, he loved this museum. He's big on World War II.
Yeah.
He builds model Panzer tanks.
Oh, yeah,
Airplanes. He reads every word book. I gotta get him.
yeah. Where she live?
Big Philly.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got the other one, the annexes in Lawrenceville. You can either,
Her father has some World War II, has nothing
This is
to do with
beautiful.
Jersey, they probably wouldn't.
I love the green.
we can't, you know, I think all the artifacts, but as far
This
as,
picture has probably, their artillery, and it was everybody from probably tri-state.
There's a space there you can have his name engraved on.
1942 picture, they all left from Fort Monroe, and there's a picture of the whole
Thank
brigade.
oh, yeah?
Guys from this area, 'cause he was from Philly. He said a lot of the guys.
Is there a date on here?
Yeah.
Training were from Jersey.
Yep.
1999,
Yeah, it was 3 big
May
units at that
something.
point.
So it took over 20 years,
You a historian?
almost
Yep.
30 years.
I knew something was wrong with him. You know, he started to get
Joe's got all
edgy
that stuff.
and,
Yeah.
But one of the guys.
you know, with alcohol, and I knew something was, and I finally got this thing on post-trauma stress, a booklet.
Right.
He had like 9 out of the 11. I said, guess what, you're going to,
Oh,
you're
good for
going
you.
down to Wissahickon and you're gonna,
The other guy does
You got
that.
something wrong with
you. Counterpart, he's,
Yeah.
and he did the therapy and stuff, you know. Because he didn't talk about any of this until like,
Oh, that's one of my questions I meant to ask.
yeah.
Is this the most that you've ever talked about it?
Well, after we realized that what he had,
It's realistic.
nah,
then now he talks about it.
That's awesome.
Did you do any campaign, any?
yeah, I've done it.
Thanks,
But,
Joanne.
like, whenever you hear
What's
helicopters,
it like there?
you know, he'll say, incoming, incoming.
Dirty, yeah.
And like my friend, he was talking about the one that's the lawyer, when we went to India. I went to China with him, I went to India.
Oh, yeah.
And when they were setting off firecrackers in India, he just dove right to the
I did a
ground.
couple of them.
Right.
And I said, see, you got a little of it too, Steve, you know what I'm
Now,
in.
the movies you saw, that any in here pertain to that? Lone
Do you want to talk
Survivor.
about the Coochie tunnels?
Oh, no, oh,
Yeah.
they were scary.
I like reading all that.
It's amazing how much you've gotten around the world.
Yeah, they were, we went through them and they said they actually enlarged them for the tourists, but they were only like about this wide, and you're like crawling through them, and then they'd have a little square like the size of the room, and they would say, you're going to be filmed. And they said, this is the command center, and it was amazing.
Wow.
But it was like, when you were going through them, there was somebody in front of us that was kind of getting stuck and scared. And you know you couldn't turn around, there was somebody behind you, and then I'm thinking, I'm getting a little paranoid in here.
Oh, I would too.
Anyway, go back to Vietnam. Vietnam is beautiful, is a beautiful
I've
country.
read a couple of them.
Like he said.